Hey guys, we're gonna go over the woodpecker, spiral, and we're gonna go over spiral extension, bringing that woodpecker over top. We're gonna keep it very basic, and my basic is actually gonna be kind of challenging. We call this the B stance. So the 2 points of contact on the back foot, you're keeping that toe pretty close to that heel. And that's gonna actually maybe test your balance a little bit more. When we get longer, our tendency is to arch, and that pushes this forward. When we get this closer, it allows us to engage, close everything down here in the front. Getting this very tight, the chest very big, because the breath is the most important part. Is that inhale, pulling that belly in, finding all that tight fascia in the back. We're spreading it out widthwise, lengthwise, opening everything up in that posterior region there. Right opposite of your diaphragm. Diaphragm's here, attached to the ribs and the spine. It wants to come out. We're trying to close it in, pull it in tight. That way the breath pushes in to your spine more in the back of your rib cage. So keeping that closer stance there is going to help us out. Make sure that foot's not turned out. The idea is we're almost wrapping those hips close. Don't wrap the hips too much here. We don't want a strong glute squeeze. In fact, if you can shut the glutes off, that helps. Gauge that belly, pull in tight, then wrap the hips closed. And then let's just go into a long wing position here for a couple breaths. Practice that breathing. If you're able to lock your elbows out, you're probably arching. If you're big and tall, pulling the head behind you, when you open those arms up in the long wing, you'll feel lots of tension in the neck. It'll feel like you can't straighten your elbows out. That's what we want, this position with those elbows, tension in that bicep. Breathing. It's almost like you're holding two big weights. They're pulling your shoulders down, your neck is getting tall. You're squeezing like a pair of scissors. And I'm pulling the hips hinged just a little bit behind me where that back heel is pulling towards the ground. So it's almost like it's 50-50 weight, but a little bit more in the back. Keep breathing in. The slow exhale combined with a strong engagement of that diaphragm psoas, that anterior chain here, all very tight. After a few breaths, good to inhale and engage everything, and then bring those arms up. That's what we say, float the arms up. We're not letting go of everything. We're keeping that very controlled and engaged. This should be very tough. This is a tough position. This is even harder. It should be hard to get those fingertips together. Hang out a little bit there, let them find each other. Pull that head nice and long. What we're gonna do here, make sure your weight's back. Breathe. And if you have trouble with the hips, hinging, what you can do is bring the arms back down, hold on to the hips, and that'll help you hinge that front hip. Hips pulling back, the knee is not going with it. We're finding that hamstring tension. The feet should already be really tired, the legs should be really tired. And then you can reach those hands out in that woodpecker position. Again, it should be tough. Then, now that you feel that hip moving, it's isolated motion, you can press into it a little bit more. Breath in. That spiral's kind of tough. So what we're doing is we're taking the right hip toward the left. It's very subtle. It's very easy to just do it from the spine, but remember, all these steps are about lengthening, pulling that spine very long, so the spine doesn't bend here, and it doesn't here. Pushing that a little deeper. Do a few breaths here. I should feel some uneven tension now. And then we're going to take this overhead. So I'm going to pull that hip, that heel's driving through the ground, lifting overhead. Might look like the easiest part. Should be a lot of tension. Very tough to talk here. It's also going to really open up the shoulder blades. Test the balance, test the feet. Let's pull Pull those hips back behind us into that hinge, that woodpecker. Back here. Bring it overhead, nice and tall. Chance to reset the neck. Pull back into long wing, nice and slow. Check your elbows, check your stance. Are you here? Are you arched? Because that's not where you should be. Building tension each step of the way. Let me change my angle a little bit here. And we'll move on. So now we're gonna go right foot forward, left foot back. You can see I'm not balance beam. Feet are in line with the hips. Knees not locking out, back knees not locking out, but neither am I really bending. They're squeezing. It's almost like you're trying to straighten the knees out, but we don't want to lock them out because then it causes a subtle bit of motion in the lumbar spine that we don't want. So for getting our measuring stick, hands nice and strong. We didn't do this step the first time, but you can definitely add this in. A couple of breaths right here. Elbows pulling really wide. The breath is the most important thing, so make sure you got this right. Measuring stick hands really help. And then we can float into long wing, good transition place. Watch the back, make sure you're not arching. If you really wants to, you can feel that tendency of the back to help out. You see the difference there between holding the abdominal engagement, spine really stiff where, oh, I can barely open up those arms because the shoulder blades aren't helping. It's all in the shoulder joint, not the scapular joint. And then when I float up, I'm not letting the shoulders shift forward either. So we have the opposite problem there where the shoulders want to roll in. We're keeping them back. They're really not moving. It's the hands that are doing a lot of the work. Pulling the neck long here. And you can either pull that hip behind you. It's almost like I'm trying to straighten the back knee and I'm keeping the bend in the front knee, not letting it move forward. That's when I start to feel my spine helping out. So run through that again. It's all about the repetition here. Remember, keep that stance really narrow. If you find yourself wanting to reach back into a runner's lunge, don't do it. Big and tall, tight. Pull those hips in. Couple breaths here. So this will really help you with the independence from pain workout. Good little basic stuff here to help make that workout, to help you feel it. So my steps might be a little different. You can find what works for you as long as it's building more tension, that's good. It shouldn't be joint pain. It should be all the muscles. If you want to come down here, just to remind yourself, that's the hip. That's where I'm hinging, that's good. Make sure you're really tight here. Then you could float those hands back up. Pull that hip away from the hands. And you're gonna add a little bit of spiral. And stay longer here than I am. Fight for about 10 breaths. Each position. And then take that overhead. Big and tall. Pull that hip behind you. Come back. Reset. Long wing. Measuring stick hands. Step forward. Should be very tiring. Independence from pain is a 7-minute workout. I was only really engaged there, not too much, right? It took me a while to go through it all. But when I'm really focused, when I'm not talking, I'm even more tired than this and shaky. The more you do this stuff, the more tired you're gonna be. That's good, you're getting it. Should feel a little off balance. If you notice one side you struggle with a little bit more, off balance or it's tighter, I always like to do a little extra set on that weak side we're trying to get back to center because we're all a little rotated. You know, we have this left pattern or this right pattern of twisting. But if you don't know and you can't tell, that's fine. Because the biggest problem we all share is compression of the spine and the hips not supporting the spine. So everything we did right there, very good to help open up, lengthen that spine. If any time it hurts the low back, hurts your knees, anything like that, reset, continue rewatching this video, ask questions, maybe use some tips, or you could try some of the kneeling stuff because that helps really isolate that lower back, help prevent any injuries there. So the kneeling, you can do a lot of the same stuff we just did, coming into those positions, letting that foot be out front, pulling those hips back, hinging over top. Now your knees can't help you out. Being here in this position, anytime the feet, the heels are wider than your knees, that's gonna help really shift that internal rotation, help you with lower lumbar facet problems, lower disc problems, and the breathing in there. It's almost like now we're falling forward before we were falling back. So we can run through a lot of those same positions that we just did. Really hard to control that abdominal here. Breathing, head tall. And then you're pushing the ground away, either squeezing inward anchor or pushing the ground away, outward anchor. Careful getting up, take your time. Pull into the stand position. Ask questions. Review some of the decompression stuff if this is hurting you. It's just the basic breathing, standing there. A lot could be said for that because you can also get a little hip hinge there. Just adding this is going to help hit one-sided issues and really help train isolated hip motion. But keep it simple. Don't get crazy. Don't get super lunge. I know like some of the later videos I've done, a lot of flat foot squats. You know, we're doing the Spidey lunges. You know, and that's what people, they like this stuff. I get it. And that's good warm-up stuff. Tighten the nuts and bolts. End it with this kind of stuff. Engaging. Because you're retraining good motion. Because then when you're not thinking about it, you'll move better unconsciously, and that's the goal, is to make your movements better throughout the day. How you're sitting, how you're walking, how you're standing, how you're breathing. Those are the big things that work against you, break you down over time. Do you keep working on independence from pain? Spend some time working on that.